The relationship between solar and roofing has always been complicated. On one hand, they're natural partners. About 80% of residential solar in the US is installed on rooftops. A typical solar array will last 25 to 30 years, ideally matching the lifespan of a good roof. But historically, these industries have operated in separate worlds. Roofing contractors install roofs, solar contractors install solar, and homeowners are caught in the middle, often having to coordinate between two different companies with two different timelines and two different warranties. The numbers tell the story. Over 5 million homes now have solar panels on them, but less than 3% of those installations were done as part of a combined roofing and solar project. Meanwhile, about 13% of solar installations require roof replacements within 5 years, creating disruption, additional costs, and frustrated homeowners. This disconnect creates real-world problems. We've all heard horror stories about improper flashing leading to leaks, or weight loading issues causing structural damage. A recent survey found that 28% of homeowners considering solar worry about roof damage, the second highest concern after the initial cost. The industry is starting to recognize this challenge. Some manufacturers are developing integrated products that serve both purposes. Traditional roofing companies are acquiring solar capabilities, and we're seeing more cross-training between these trades. Saint-Gobain, through its CertainTeed division, sits at this critical intersection. As one of the world's largest building materials companies and a major roofing manufacturer, they have a unique perspective on how these systems can work together more seamlessly. Andrew Wickham brings a fascinating background to this challenge. Before joining CertainTeed as a senior director of product for solar, he built a racking company, SnapNrack, maybe you've heard of it, within Sunrun, America's largest residential solar provider. He's seen firsthand how these industries can either clash or complement each other. Beyond his professional expertise, Andrew brings a unique perspective to everything else he does. As an accomplished strongman who's competed nationally, he understands how seemingly separate elements, strength, technique, and nutrition, must work together as a system to achieve results. Today we'll explore with Andrew how the solar and roofing industries can become more integrated, creating better experiences for homeowners and new opportunities for contractors. Welcome to When Life Gives You Lumens, Andrew. Great to have you here.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Jason.
So just to start, I would love to get a sense for what excites you about your transition to CertainTeed and where are things going?
What excites me about my transition to CertainTeed is honestly, it kind of fulfills a vision that I've had for a long time. When I first joined solar and came into this industry, it always blew my mind looking at existing systems like, wait, there's this entire category for racking. You don't just screw the panels into the roof. And my favorite movie as a kid was The Sandlot, and it's like the simplest thing is just to hop over the fence and get it. And so always, and this goes back to the SnapNrack days, every aspect of innovation that I've been working on since joining the industry has been to eliminate the steps to install solar, to integrate solar more simply into roofs, etc. And I actually started working with CertainTeed about 3 years ago within Sunrun from a product management standpoint, as I was evaluating solar roof options. And we started partnering with them from the SnapNrack side. And honestly, I just think, if you think about CertainTeed, 120 years old, the largest building products manufacturer in the United States. They're owned by Saint-Gobain, a 360-year-old French company that's the largest glass manufacturer in the world. There's no one more poised to make an impact and actually revolutionize and change the solar industry than they are with that backbone. So the opportunity that I get to come in and lead a solar products division within a larger organization that has all of that built out on the manufacturing side, the R&D side, et cetera, is a super unique opportunity to make an impact in our industry and change the way solar is installed and actually make it not just on the roof, but part of a roof.
Perhaps this is a stupid question, but why would they care? Devil's advocate, solar is not a large industry right now. There's a full slate of skeptics. Saint-Gobain and CertainTeed are massive organizations touching tons of parts of the contracting and building sphere. Why do they care about solar? What is it about solar and some of these products that are still maybe a little bit niche even? What excites them? Where do they see this going?
Do you know how a company lasts 360 years?
Tell me.
It's not through year to year revenue and just looking good on the earnings calls. It's actually being forward thinking and innovative and trying to think about what technology is next before other people do, and investing in it, and trying to be on the forefront. And so one of the visions that I discussed with Saint-Gobain leadership before joining the team, and one of the things that they truly also believe, is that go back to the 1970s, right? If you told someone in the 1970s that in 30 years you'd have a phone that was smarter and better than any computer they had, they'd tell you you were an idiot, right? And if we look at any polysilicon technology, all it does is shrink and get more efficient and better. And we've seen that in the solar industry. I mean, we've got panels now that are 440 watts that are the size of things that used to be 120 watts. It's just the natural evolution. So my vision and Saint-Gobain's vision is there is a future where solar isn't going to be its own category, like you're talking about, like, oh, it's small compared to roofing, or like how big Saint-Gobain is. It's going to be a technology and part of all building materials. So the long-term vision is that when you're installing walls and a roof on your house, you're not even going to know it's solar. That technology is going to be at the point where it's just integrated into all products, and not be its own separate category. And obviously that's a ways away, but I won't be here to cash out on this bet. I guarantee you in 100 years, we'll probably be at that point of technology. And our job right now with the time we have is to get us closer to that and continue to innovate. And so for them, you got to realize they're not looking at 2024, 2025, trying to, oh, how much money can we make in the solar department? Obviously, we need to be profitable and have a revenue stream, but it's more like we need to be working on this and continuing to evolve now, because they plan to be around for another 360 years.
Wow. Do you think there's a world in which panels go away and it's only BIPV related products, shingles, tiles, etc.?
I 100% think that, at some point that will be the case. It won't just be BIPV. I think solar will just be in everything. Like, you'll be generating your own electricity with your vehicle, your whatever, your phone will just charge itself, because solar will be that efficient that you just set your phone out in the sun and it's going to just charge. But
wow.
Yeah. Now, solar farms are the one thing that I think, the utility scale stuff, that'll be the slowest to change, because that is such a big part of our industry. But yeah, I definitely believe there's a future where it's not its own category.
I have a hot take on solar farms that's a little bit of a tin hat comment, as my colleagues call it, but I'm going to throw it out there early on in our conversation.
Okay.
Fast forward 100 years, if you're correct, where solar in some way will be integrated into every window, that's obvious. That's already starting to happen. Every south-facing facade, that's obvious. Every highway, and the whole power roads, like all that stuff we can see happening, right? I actually think we're going to look back at solar farms and be like, wow, we were really uninnovative. We decided to just put a ton of glass for miles and miles in the desert, and then spend billions of dollars cabling it back to major cities. And we're going to look at this like, what were we thinking? Can we not find any better use for the land? Like the whole idea of like, oh, we could cover Arizona in solar panels and power the US. Like, sure, let's do that. I think we're going to look back and be like, wow, we were primitive.
Yeah. But I mean, and this is kind of one of these things culturally as a human race now. It's so funny how easy it is to judge people of the past, but obviously these people at the time have the best of intentions, and that's the technology we have to deploy today. And we know it's better than the technology of yesterday between oil and gas, and coal, etc. So like it's the one of the best technologies we have today to generate electricity, and this is how we can do it today. But yeah, we'll probably be judged in the future. Like, why the hell were you guys doing that?
Are you familiar with the Ivanpah or Tonopah projects, the heliostatin tower ones?
I am not.
It's basically a solar thermal technology, and there are similar ones with parabolic troughs, where basically you have a ton of mirrors pointing at a steam.
Well, I've seen those.
Yeah. So
you see them on the drive to Vegas.
Exactly. So that's Ivanpah.
Okay.
And in my earlier parts of my career, my job was to track some of those, and one of the groups I was with helped finance one of them. And the amount of birds that get zapped as they go between So I saw a headline recently that was like, those projects just like aren't penciling anymore. I know that the parabolic trough one didn't pencil because one of the parts wasn't there and the manufacturer's out of business. And it's all Solyndra stories, but at a larger scale, and I don't think the grid the solar farms in the deserts are going to be quite like that anytime soon. But again, this whole idea of technologies that were like, this is a great idea. Like, this is the only path. Like, we have to move the experience curve in our industry down and drive up efficiency and innovate. So there will be failures. But it's going to be fascinating to see, going back to your comment, like how much we can integrate solar to drive adoption without that efficiency piece being higher. That's obviously the big question. Like a PV laminate, for example, great technology, but low efficiency. Same thing with putting solar on your clothing or anything really. You could put in your backpack, people have. All right. So we digress. I want to go back to CertainTeed. So I guess straight up question, does BIPV work? Like, where is the technology now, and walk us through the different types of technology that's out there.
BIPV works as good as regular rooftop solar PV. I mean, we're talking about the same technology as far as the cell technology and how it generates solar. The big difference is it's integrated into the roof. Right now, the main players are warranting, and it's part of a bigger roof system. And it's a much simpler process and install as far as not having these different components. You're just putting up solar roof shingles, screwing them into the roof, plugging them together and going. So yeah, it's been out for a while, I think. And there's been some new developments in the technology in recent years, but no one should feel that BIPV is any more not advanced or unsafe than traditional photovoltaics. Like, it works great. And why not do it if you're re-roofing your house?
Is the production somewhat comparable if you were to put panels over the same square footage, the same space, as if you were to put?
Yeah. The power density is comparable. Like I said, it's the same cell technology and stuff. The one aspect of it that is totally honest is because you're talking about lower volumes, lower economies of scale compared to these larger sized modules, and custom size, because they're typically only 2 cells wide across manufacturers. The cost is higher. Just because the volume hasn't been there for the industry. It's a lot easier to get your costs lower on when you're doing 200 gigawatts of standard solar panels. So, but yeah, no, it's good. It's just more of a volume economies of scale question at this point.
I mean, we've seen the experience curves for solar, and then batteries followed it nicely. Like, this will hit that scaling motion. Have you guys done any analysis as to, I don't know, how many installs a year it would take for this to really hit an economically viable, a parity scale?
We have not. That's definitely something that would be good to look into. I think what's interesting about this category that's unique, and you mentioned it on the intro, is it's really at that bridge between roofers and solar contractors. So a solar contractor can install the BIPV portion. That's no problem. They're screwing panels to the roof, plugging them together just like a standard solar system. Solar contractor typically can't do the roofing aspect. Now, I know there are tons of roofing and solar contractors out there, so I'm ignoring those ones. But either way, even with those, it's usually a different crew or different personnel, right? Roofing contractors, they can install the shingles. They can install the solar panels, the BIPV, because it's not that much different than the shingles. It's just switching from a nail gun to a screw gun. But they can't do the electrical work of tying it into the inverter and all of that. So, one of the things that beyond just the roofing and solar guys is how do we mesh these two industries and find partners between like a roofing contractor that wants to get into solar and a solar contractor that wants to do this but doesn't have the roofing, to actually have them work together and be successful, because you do have, it's like a Venn diagram of skill sets, as I would say. Yeah.
There was someone who used to work at a large racking company that left to go focus on building out the to convince roofing companies to become solar companies. And he was, so focused on, and because our as an industry itself, we don't have enough labor in solar. There aren't enough businesses. And ironically, I know there's been a handful of bankruptcies, that's a separate story, but there is purely just not enough people doing solar in the United States to achieve our climate goals, to achieve energy independence, like all the benefits that we know of, right? And so the thesis is there's tons of roofers and that they can all become solar people. And I just don't believe in that. And I'd love for you to tell me if you agree or disagree, and I'll tell you why I don't believe in it. It is just such a different process. A roofing project is, not to diminish it, but it's slapping shingles on a roof. It is, you don't need to squeeze in squares in certain, roof segments. You don't have to worry about electrical and fire and and all this other stuff the same way. The margins, the economics are totally different. The regulatory environment's totally different. build cycles, the timeline to do projects, it is all completely different. And someone who does roofing all the time is not going to want to learn all this other stuff in solar. Was my assumption. I mean, even when I'm home and I'm watching a roofing crew go up and do it, it's a day. It's really quick. It's not as highly skilled. And so I just don't see roofers becoming solar people. I can see solar people bringing in roofing departments or having roofing relationships, but that also is a different situation. So what's your perspective on the fusion of roofing and solar? Will it stay separate? Will it align? Is maybe your product the one that will bring them together? What's your take?
I think I think both sides of that honestly have a chance. There's a lot of roofers out there, and to your point, there's a lot more businesses doing roofing and a lot more roofers than there are solar contractors in the United States. And roofers are looking for a way to differentiate themselves as well. So when they're doing a re-roof, being able to upsell to the roof and solar is something that some roofers are already doing and relying on a solar contractor. And that network, and like with a company like CertainTeed, the fact that we have this nationwide network of thousands of roofers and we've got our own team to support them, we're taking both approaches. We're talking to solar contractors and working with them to train them on the product and do exactly what you said. Because you're right, that's a little easier. Hey, you're a solar contractor, we'll pair you with a roofer and you guys take care of it. Or you're a solar contractor, just add a roofing department to do the rest of the job. Easy. But what we're doing with the roofing contractors is we're actually, and to answer your question, education is the thing, right? We're actually like giving them a white glove service of having them try their first job with the Solstice shingle product line. And we'll even provide them with an electrician or a solar contractor to do that portion of it. We provide hands-on training, field training to do the first couple installs with them, to try to walk them through it so they can see it's not actually that much harder than roofing. Traditional solar is a lot different because you're measuring out, finding rafters, getting your spans, trying to get your mounting locations, snapping in rails, putting on panels, all this. But all the mounting and everything is fully integrated into these shingles. So you're literally just laying it on the roof and putting 5 screws in each one of them. That's not that different than laying a shingle on and putting 5 nails in each one of them. And so it's actually something that once roofers try it, they're able to do that piece. What had historically been done is trying to get them to also do like the downstairs electrical and tie-in. And that, to your point, is just out of there. So it's like better to just provide them with an electrician or a solar contractor to finish the job. But of course, roofers want to grow their business and grow their revenue. So they'd rather do the rooftop piece instead of, having the solar guy take that portion of the income from them.
That's interesting. It's not, there will be a hybrid, right? I guess between the different skill sets of the different contractors and also the different products that exist, it's not binary. It's going to be some matrix around product and skill and appetite for each business.
And we have to try all those avenues and, continue to pilot and see which one works best. And it might be different in different markets, but, to attempt one route only probably wouldn't be the best in case the other route ends up being more successful. And we've got the team and, a large organization to support both. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. How does what you're doing and your philosophies relate to the Tesla solar roof product? Or if you just want to give your general thoughts on that product.
The Tesla solar roof's actually come a long way. I actually had the chance to take a look at it a couple of weeks ago at IRE in San Antonio, and they've made improvements to the installation of that product and some of the product design and stuff. We actually have a Tesla solar roof competitor. It's called Sunstyle. It's a full solar roof. I don't know. You've probably seen it. It's the Dragon Scale one that's on the Googleplex in Mountain View.
Yeah.
It's a really cool, different architectural looking system. And, that one and the Tesla solar roof, they're expensive. Our Solstice shingle product, similar to some of our competitors, is a partial BIPV option that obviously is much more cost effective because you're just doing a regular roof around the solar shingles. I think there's a future for both products, and I think it will be interesting to see how people innovate to bring those technologies together, because I don't think solar roof is the only way to go, like the Tesla route or our Sunstyle route, just given the price point. Yeah, if eventually that solar roof is the price of retrofit solar, sure, why would anyone put panels on their house, right? But as of now, I see the market segment, at least for the next few years, of there being a segment for partial BIPV, segment for traditional BIP or traditional PV, and then a segment for, that solar roof. But let's just say I've got some ideas and we're looking at ways to innovate in a way that brings all those technologies together, and potentially doesn't have to necessarily be different products for different applications.
That's awesome. It's the solar roof in particular. It seems like it's still far out for a lot of people, right? Kind of like the early electric cars, the allure of it, no one really knew. Similar to the solar shingles, right? And your comment around where they are price point with where they can be at scale, I think is indicative of that.
Yes.
I do wonder what it will take to get us at that scaling motion, because the amount of people that look to me and go, man, that solar panel is ugly. Like, even people that close to the Scanify ecosystem, they're like, I'll admit, I got a call recently from someone that we know really well, really loves Scanify, and he's like, I'm driving around Florida and I love your business, but damn, solar panels look ugly. The amount of people that put solar panels only on the back of their house. There was actually a project installed around the block recently, and they installed it on the northeast roof and then the western facing garage. And I'm like, what? Now, I think it's a TPO install because I saw the logo of the company, but I'm like, you skipped the southwest facing roof.
Yeah.
Why? And I haven't asked the neighbor, but I'm assuming it's because they didn't want it on the front of their house, which was that roof.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Hey, this won't surprise you. There are some people that pay the premium for BIPV and integrated solar roof and still don't want it on the front side.
Really?
Yeah. Not many. There was just one so far that I've heard about, but
where there's one, there will be others, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like my dad, I've been in solar for 9 years, and as long as I've been in the industry, and my dad's my best friend, we have a great relationship. It's not like my father and I don't get along. He's still like, yeah, I'll get them when they don't look like panels, like when So like, there's just still so many people like that. Yeah.
I remember in the early days with the BP black on blacks that you would always sell for the better looking options, right? Versus the blue and the silver, framing. So we're crazy. All right. So you referenced 9 years in solar for you. I'd love if you could share more about your background broadly, right? How did you get into solar? What it's been like?
Yeah, sure. No problem. So let's see. Prior to solar, I actually worked in plumbing products. Before that, I did some other things in aerospace and stuff. But for a large publicly traded plumbing products company called Zurn Wilkins, that is now Zurn LK. So I was there, and my director of products at the time, his name's Ezra Phillips. He's actually now the VP of products at Unirac. He left to go over to SnapNrack as part of Sunrun. And about, 4 months after he left, he asked if I wanted to grab a beer. We met up, and he was like, hey, I'm hiring this position for this product marketing manager. And honestly, at the time, I was like, solar? Like, this is a joke. Like, this industry isn't a real industry. You understand, coming from a 100-year-old plumbing products company, it's like we talked about earlier, like solar was like, and I was like, well, I trust Ezra. Like, I'll give this a shot. And I literally had the idea that, I'll be here 1.5 years. It'll be a good spot to just kind of like get some different experience before I go somewhere else. Obviously, that didn't happen. So yeah, came and joined the SnapNrack team as part of Sunrun. Early leadership during that time. Our general manager was Chris A. Strike. Our engineering manager was Greg McFeeters, and our applications engineering manager was Cody Norman. And Ezra was in charge of product management. And Scott Wilson was our director of sales. Oh, and Lynn Cow. Yeah. So what was interesting about this is all of these people from early SnapNrack are now like executives at different like major solar companies. So, Cody's VP of applications engineering at Array Technologies. Lynn's now a senior VP of like procurement or something at Solve Energy. Ezra, like I mentioned, is VP of products at Unirac. So it's like pretty cool to see that like this initial SnapNrack leadership team from back in the day now has gone on to just be major players at different segments of the industry, not just in residential solar racking. And yeah, like I said, first day I started was InterSolar 2016 in San Francisco. And I remember just coming in, and I've been doing research, and like the whole time I'm just going like, why is there this solar racking category? Like, this doesn't make sense. And there was a really cool product at that InterSolar specifically, this company called BeamReach Solar. that had a fully integrated module with like a plastic folding design with ballasted systems that you just brought the pallet stack up to the roof, fold these things out, put a brick on, plugged them together. And like they had this demo going. It was so cool. I was like, yeah, why isn't every solar panel like that? Like why is the Iron Ridge UFO like the biggest thing being sold at this show, just this little bolt? And yeah, from there, kind of started with this vision of that in mind. Recently, Zep Solar had sold to Solar City, so like everybody was so focused on who's going to make the next railless systems because that got pulled off the market. But throughout the years, just constantly was focused on how do we take steps out of the install process. The biggest benefit of being a part of Sunrun is you have a network of thousands of nationwide installers. And so your feedback loop on product development is extremely fast. Like you will hear if an idea sucks right away. And so we worked throughout the years of like innovating our main rail product line, innovating our railless product line, and actually taking a lot of the thought process and steps out of the solar install process to where one of the more recent products we launched before I left was our top speed product that literally mounts to the panels first and you just bring it up to the roof and you screw it in and you're done. But yeah, the focus was just constantly on pushing things forward. And we just had many leadership changes throughout the different history there. And I was always the type of person that when someone left, I'd be like, let me take that on and, disrupt things and try to push that to the next level. So I went from product marketing manager to applications engineering manager to we combined applications engineering and marketing into customer experience. So that was like senior manager of that. And then eventually became our director of products and engineering. So I had all of R&D and product management, marketing, applications all under me. And then eventually grew to, have the entire operations manufacturing side and sales and running the division, but just actually a really cool gradual way of working hard, learning, listening, trying to understand the business and working your way up by doing the right thing and trying to do the best by your people. So
I know you've described the SnapNrack experience somewhat as a startup within Sunrun.
Yeah.
What is it? If you want to go deeper on that and share, like, what was the culture like at SnapNrack and how was it to operate within, the larger Sunrun entity?
I'd say it varied from years to years. The SnapNrack team was a very tight community. I would say, at a certain point, I definitely probably referenced Dominic Toretto way too much. Talking about like we're family and stuff like that. Fast and Furious, everyone, if no one on listening has ever watched it, Dominic Toretto is Vin Diesel's character. And yeah, anyways. And there were many years where Sunrun definitely, like employees within Sunrun looked down upon us or like, those are just the SnapNrack people, like, oh, we're the Sunrun people. We're the real people. But that changed because as soon as someone got a taste of racking and the complexity of it and how much it impacts an install, like we never got that from the operations side of the business, installers, operations leadership, everybody understood how much racking was critical to the solar installation. Because let's be honest, solar panels are just sheets of glass. Every part of the installation is how you attach them to the roof. And so it grew throughout the years to where, yeah, we had our tight-knit team that was like really fun, like a startup. We all worked really hard. We also, all lived locally in the same beautiful area in San Luis Obispo, and we go out for drinks after work and had one of those tight startup type communities. But we ended up gaining a lot of respect from the broader Sunrun team to where I'd say, within the few years before I left, we were no longer, that's just those SnapNrack people. They're like beneath us. Like we were fully respected and a part of the broader Sunrun organization.
And would Sunrun only use SnapNrack products or would they use other products as well?
They use some other products, but the majority is all SnapNrack. So yeah. There are obviously variations, different roof types, or in certain areas with ground mounts and stuff. But as far as your standard residential solar installs, yeah, they'd only use SnapNrack.
Okay.
They allowed their build partners, channel partners to use. I don't want to say whatever they want, but any like legitimate racking solution. Like there were definitely some, there's been a lot of these little startup racking companies throughout the years that have popped up, and yeah, maybe those weren't allowed, but all of your major players like your Iron Ridges, Unirack, and K2, all those, they'll let their build partners, channel partners, but obviously they're going to use SnapNrack. They own SnapNrack, and yeah, so.
Now, for someone who isn't as familiar with the nuances of racking, how do you differentiate between racking products? And maybe, you don't have to get too technical, but yeah, how do you tell them apart?
Well, it's
there's
getting
rail
hard.
and railless, of course, but what are the nuances?
It's getting harder too. There used to be a big difference with we were the first ones to have like a snap-in open channel rail where people could run their wires in. We had a whole bunch of accessories, but honestly, now everybody's got an open channel rail. So that's all pretty similar. I mean, now a lot of the ways people are selling are on the nuances of how they actually fit together. And it's like, wow, this snaps in easier, or, this slides easier. And so that detailed design actually matters with components like this when things are getting very similar. I think sealing technology on the roof is something where people have innovated and tried to push the limits to eliminate the chance for installer error, and make it so that there's a quality roof seal. And then, components you can pre-assemble, make it so that there's less SKUs to manage. It's all just trying to reduce the headache that racking can cause by making the category simplified, easy for not just the installers to use, but the material planners, stuff like that. And a lot of it now is little nuances, like just having different screws that have better strength, so you need less screws. But yeah.
It feels like it's getting increasingly commoditized and unsexy.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. Like, that could be a great thing for a maturing industry and for scaling. And obviously we're seeing the industry consolidate. I remember one of the racking companies put out this hilarious marketing video to promote a new product. And it was, in one hand, it's like an incredibly creative and thoughtful and, interesting way to talk about racking. But at the end of the day, it's, no offense, it's racking, and if you're not in the world of racking or an installer who deeply care about those technical nuances, it's just one of the pieces of the building materials,
Yeah.
100%.
Was it Pegasus? They've got some pretty creative.
Yeah, it was Pegasus. It was fantastic. And everyone was sharing it. It was, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, it's actually a really critical component. But it's not exciting in my opinion, unless it really affects your life.
I've always loved their marketing, and they do such a great job with some of the tongue-in-cheek stuff and everything.
Yep.
I think that's the funny thing. Like you mention it. Hey, guess what? I'm not a SnapNrack employee anymore. So I don't have necessarily so much bias. And the truth is, throughout the years of working and competing and stuff, the racking industry is very much a scene of frenemies. So, I think I just mentioned Ezra is now at Unirack. We had just hired, big name in racking, Johan at SnapNrack from K2 before I left. And it's like, there's no actual knife fights or bad blood. And so when people do stuff cool, because to your point, it is somewhat a commodity, and we're all trying to sell on that tiny little nuance. And so there's just an appreciation, because it's a tough thing to sell, and it's because it's honestly, in standard traditional solar, it's the toughest thing to get someone to convert because they standardize on it so much.
Yep, exactly. And you and I have compared some anecdotes that while the products are getting increasingly similar, each racking company seems to have their own culture and personality, at least getting to know the individuals. And it's really stark. It's fascinating. Scanifly is, depending on when we air this, we'll have announced that we're integrating with the majority of the racking companies through our software in different ways, whether it's for plan sets or for layout integrations. You and I are working on that together for SnapNrack. But getting through that process, it's been fascinating to learn the cultures of each company, because they really are quite unique.
Yes. No, they all have their own style and flair, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, people should be who they are, and for companies to take on a personality that fits, so that people can all get along and feel comfortable in the workplace, whether that is a more rigid workplace that's more of a corporate structure, or a more startup workplace that's a little bit more fluid. People find their right spot and find the culture that's right for them. And it's interesting how companies take on a personality, that's for sure.
Indeed. Yeah. Let's ask about you for a little bit. You're an accomplished strongman, not a power lifter, a strongman.
I did powerlifting too.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
To clarify that.
Let's clarify the difference. Clarify the difference for everyone.
Yeah. Powerlifters compete in a powerlifting competition that is the squat, bench press, and deadlift. And everything is about how much weight you lift with an equation that does it by your pound of body weight. Strongman is what you see on TV at Christmas time with World's Strongest Man, where it's like pulling the trucks or lifting the Atlas stone.
Atlas stones, okay.
Yeah, and all of that stuff. So the joke in strongman powerlifting community is you never ask a power lifter to help you move because all they know how to do is pick things up and put them right back in the same spot. And yeah, so like strongmen are definitely more of your jolly, fun. Like they know. I remember I competed at the Arnold Classic, which is the biggest. It's the biggest athletic expo in the U.S. It's in Columbus, Ohio every year. Like they have everything from fencing to bodybuilding to pickleball to table tennis. Like it's this huge expo. But the biggest two events on the main stage in the expo are the strongman competition and the bodybuilders. And it's so funny because most strongmen are, 6'5" to 6'8", 400 pounds and just like obviously very strong, where bodybuilders are actually a lot smaller than they look in magazines. They're typically, 5'5" or so. And it's pretty funny when you transition from the bodybuilders like working out in that back room to like try to get their pump on before going on stage, and then the strongmen walk in, and it's just like a totally different cast of characters because bodybuilders are obviously very serious, somewhat vain, very competitive, and the strongman guys just are coming in lifting freaking rocks and tires and stones. And just power lifters, the way the culture of that sport's gone is so many of the younger people in the sport are hyper focused on things like kilo calibrated plates and like, getting this extra 3 pounds on their lift or whatever. And it's just not the same mentality as a strongman where it's like, no, just give me something and I'm going to pick it up. I think some of those mentalities can be limiting because I can tell you this, I was competing in powerlifting first. When I started doing strongman, all my powerlifting numbers shot through the roof. But I was also having more fun because it's not a standardized event sort of thing. You get 5 events on a day and, so you can practice going into the competition and train. But like the thing about having different styles of events, powerlifting is pretty much a preconceived thing. You know who's going to win. Like this guy squats 800 pounds and, deadlifts 900 and benches 600. And that's more than this guy. And it's probably not going to be that close. When I won California's Strongest Man, I was definitely not the strongest person in the competition. But I made certain decisions throughout the competition with like selecting certain weights or taking my time on certain events because like I knew I could do that final. It was like Atlas stones. Some people would rush it, they gas themselves and they wouldn't get the final one. And I knew if I just walked, caught my breath between each one, I'd get the final Atlas stone. And if you get more than the other guy, you have higher points. So it's like, there's stuff like that where strongman requires like a little bit of thinking. And honestly, the current guy who's been winning all the competitions, he wins. He just won the Arnold Classic. This guy, Mitch Hooper, he wins every competition by like only 2 points. But and he'll bow out of certain things because he's already got second in that event, and he doesn't need to like try a higher thing because some people just want to show off, and it's something that if you're smart at, you can be successful at.
How did you get started doing all this?
Oh, I was fat and out of shape after college working for an aerospace company that everybody just sat around soldering wires and was honestly like obese. And then when I went to Zern, it was some younger people that were all in better shape. And I was like, shit, I need to get in shape. So I signed up for a triathlon. I did a triathlon.
That's one way to start going into shape. Sitting around to a triathlon.
Yeah. It sucked. But I played football, baseball, like a bunch of sports in high school. So when I was training for the triathlon, I started lifting little weights, and I always loved going to the gym. So then after the triathlon, I discovered Spartan races, started doing those, which incorporated a little bit more weight training. And then I literally like joined a new gym and like was just looking at numbers of the powerlifting meets. And I was like, yeah, I think if I focused on this, I could actually be competitive in this sport, which I did and started doing that. And then I went back home for a Thanksgiving to Santa Cruz, where my parents live and where I grew up. And there was this gym called Santa Cruz Strength. This guy, Clay Edgen, owned it. And he was like old school strongman that I like didn't know strongman was something people did. Yeah. Like now people probably have a friend that they know has done it. Like it's a little bit more popular in the age of social media. But at this time, I'd only seen World's Strongest Man, right? And I came in over Thanksgiving to this guy's gym. Super nice guy, jolly, giant. He wasn't competing anymore or anything, but owned this gym. And he like he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about trying strongman?" I was like, "That's something you can try." He's like, "Yeah, I think you'd be pretty good at it." And so he had me try a couple things like lifting stones and logs and stuff like that. And I was like, this is way freaking cooler than powerlifting. And so then I signed up for my first competition. It was in Fresno, California. I took dead last because it's hard. You have to have stamina and strength and all these things. And like, you see the weights and you're like, it actually pushes you because you'll see a weight on a competition. They'll say that you're carrying this farmer's carrier, this yoke, this, 600 pounds, right? And you're like, I can't do that. Like, I can't lift that weight. But because you have to get there and you're training, you're going to push the envelope a little bit more. You don't get to select your weight. It's like, this is the weight of the implement that you're carrying or doing. So you have to train and try to get there. And so, yeah, I took dead last in that first one, way out of my league. But I was like, I love this. And then I just started training and focusing on it. And I literally used to drive around because like the local gyms here, I actually ended up opening up a gym for a while, but local gyms here, of course, did not have strongman equipment. So I'd like procure stuff online. If I'd find like an Atlas stone here or like a strongman log, I drove down to LA to like pick up some stuff. And I'd drive around, and in the bed of my pickup truck, I had like my strongman log, my farmer's walk handles. And I literally go to the gym to do my workout. I'd pull the weights out from the gym, put them on what I was lifting, do my strongman events in the parking lot, and then go finish my workout on the machines and stuff in the gym.
That's hilarious.
It took a lot of
you really wanted to compete. You really wanted to participate.
Yeah, exactly.
The gym didn't let you just store it in his parking lot for a little?
No, it's actually a really cool spot. It's this place in San Luis Obispo called Estrada's Gym, and it's one of the oldest gyms in California, opened in 1957. And if you go in there, it's literally like a trip back in time. It's where I work out now, and I help the new owners out with it and stuff. The owner at the time, Gene Estrada, he was 92, and he was a very cantankerous old man. And he'd been doing this, you got to realize, for 60 years. Like the stories of him throwing people out of the gym and like punching people in the face at meets because he got upset. Like you're talking old school roughneck type person, right? I literally, when I was trying to join this gym, called him like multiple times, and he'd say, yeah, and they're from 11 to 12:30 every day. And I'd show up and I'd wait there, and he'd never show up. And then one time he did show up, and I was like, hey, I talked to you on the phone. And he just looked at me and just ignored me and just walked away. So then I wrote a freaking letter and stuck it in his mailbox telling him how much I appreciated like all he's done for the sport and the history and stuff. And, left that. And then I came back the next day. He just walks up to me with a waiver, hands it to me. I sign it. And he's like, you got 2 rules. Rack your weights, wipe down the equipment, keep the door locked when you're in here so no stragglers try to come in. And I was like, yes, sir. And eventually grew to have a relationship where like he appreciated strong people, but like most of the people in this gym, he didn't like the pretty boy college kids coming in with their Instagram videos and shit like that, which I was not one of them. He recently passed away a couple of years ago, sadly, but lived a long, good life. But yeah, he wasn't the type of person at that time that I was like, hey, can I store my, Atlas stones in your gym?
Right. Can I put my log up against the wall, and yeah.
Straight up out of an old boxing movie type place. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny. It sounds like a great place to start this type of sport for you, like to really get trained and to grind through it.
Yeah.
I want to ask a little about your creativity. You obviously have vision and thoughtfulness and a perspective on where our industry is going. You've always had that. Where does that come from for you? What inspires that? Whether it's where you wanted to take SnapNrack as a business or its product or your view of the racking space as a whole. Now it's with BIPV and roofing and the combination of these two industries coming together. Where for you is this vision and creativity come from?
I'd say it's a mix of 2 things if I'm trying to think about it. Growing up, I was definitely always the type of kid and stuff that was into new technology. Like, even though I played sports and stuff, like I freaking played EverQuest in junior high. Yeah, don't tell any of the girls. But like I was always like into tech stuff, and even starting my career, I'd always like be on the verge and seeing what new gadgets were coming out. And I just always appreciated innovation, and it's something that like when I'm bullshitting with my friends and having beers, most of the time it results in like whatever that next, big great idea is, whether it's for a business or a product. Like, what if this? And it's just always been a piece of me. Now, as it's applied to my career in solar, I think there's this mixture that came in. My first job out of college was as a manufacturing and quality engineer. So I was looking at production lines and trying to figure out how to take steps out to take cost out of the assembly process and essentially lower cogs on products. But it was all value stream engineering and looking like, how do we simplify this process to make our business more efficient? And so my early career, which I believe is a lot of times where a lot of like some of our brain development happens as far as our approach to things, kind of that was one of my focuses. So when I look at things like a lot of people look at a factory line and they're like, yeah, that requires manufacturing engineering. When I came into solar, I'm looking at the install on the rooftop and I'm saying, this is a factory on a roof. How do we make this more efficient? And so I think that's where it comes from, is like a little bit of the mixture of just always liking technology and innovation, but kind of that manufacturing, like engineer, like mentality where it's like and I gotta be honest, it's bad. Like, I have an electric truck now, but when I had a gas vehicle, I wouldn't go to a gas station on the left side of the freeway. Like I didn't want to take the time to cross and deal with the lights. Like, I'd wait for the gas station on the right side, because especially, this now having kids, like everything I do in my daily life, I'm trying to just like crank things out as fast as possible. And my brain is just wired that way as far as how fast can I accomplish, as much as possible in this amount of time. And yeah, so that answers the question a little bit.
It does. Yeah. It does. Well, it gives us good perspective of you as a child and how you might have been both cool and a little secret nerdy, which, that tracks even professionally, but also the constant goal of optimizing. Last question for you is any sage advice for people who are looking to get into the solar industry?
Have tough skin. I would say that a lot of people get into the solar industry and they have this, hey, I'm a millennial. They have this somewhat like millennial Gen Z mentality. It's like, oh, it's solar, we're saving the environment. And they will be quickly disappointed when they find out that, just like any industry, people are here to make money. And obviously I've been able to grow in my career and be successful through focusing on innovation. But I would say for people not to be misguided to think this is just some giant kumbaya industry that's all about saving the environment or anything like that. You realize really quickly that there are some very sharp business people in this industry, and that the bottom line and money is like very critical. And so you have to treat it like a business. And I think when we see people come in from other industries and corporations, they're able to understand that quite well. But I do see some young people that join the solar industry as like their first job. They can get jaded pretty quickly, if that makes sense.
It does. And I've seen it as well. I hate the term solar coaster, but considering all of the externalities affecting our industry, being realistic to what's going on and trying to scale this is definitely a good bit of advice. That's for sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for the time. Fascinating discussion around where roofing and solar can go, both separately and together. It sounds like we do agree that the next couple of decades, and certainly out further, there's going to be a lot of changes to what solar is, but the future remains really bright. And also appreciate the education on powerlifting versus strongman. We'll hopefully see each other at the gym at some point. See if you still got it.
Come on out to California.
Would love to. Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Jason.
Take care.
Yeah.